I may have been at Lab instead of at the big Hearthstone reveal here in San Francisco, but I'm here with you all now for this great podcast of ours. Welcome to the Impact Factor. The Impact Factor is what happens when two scientists and two best friends get together to talk about video games. My name is Alex Samocha, and I'm joined this week, as I am every week here on the Impact Factor, by the guy who'll join me in apologizing for talking almost exclusively about fighting games for the next hour and a half. My co-host, Charles Fliss.
Boy, I hope you like fighting games, folks, because I sure do. And that's most of what we're going to talk about today. We've just had an amazing fighting game tournament, and we're excited about it. So there will be Hearthstone talk, there might be Heroes of the Storm talk, and there's definitely going to be fighting game talk on this episode of the Impact Factor.
So please stick with us here. I know fighting games might not be everyone's thing, but there's so much good news about fighting games. There's so much to talk about. We're freshly off of EVO. We'll get to that in news and views. It was a great, exciting tournament. You know, if any of you who've listened to any episode, I guarantee you, Fliss and I have talked about fighting games at some point, one point or another. So, please be excited.
And in this episode, we're going to make our case for why you should care about fighting games too.
Yeah.
So definitely, please be excited.
I'm going to plug some blog article I may or may not have written about the very subject. But so Fliss, how are you doing?
This is a blog article of Alex's that you can read in less than 30 minutes. Which is a huge step.
I heard on a recent podcast I just listened to that long-form games writing is a rarity, so I think I'm among a select group of elite writers who don't just put out 500-word pieces every day.
Well, you're certainly among a group of writers. I'll definitely give you that.
Just removing a couple of those adjectives in there.
Yeah, but hey, man, I'm doing great. I just got back. It's coming up on midnight here in Japan, and I just got back from a farewell party for some of my fellow teachers with my staff. So gonna miss those people, but it's been good. I'm feeling good, and I'm excited to talk some video games.
Yeah, man. Well, we have a lot of video games to talk to, so no more banter. You're not allowed. I'm cutting you off.
But I love banter.
Yeah, I know you do. Very intimately. But the Impact Factor is where I bring my perspectives as a biomedical scientist and combine them with, and usually against, Fliss's social scientist worldview to have great discussions about video games. Without further ado, let's get it started, as we always do, with some news and views.
News and views.
In an academic journal, News and Views collects the best of recent events and findings. Here, Fliss and I scour through the week in video game news to find the stories with the biggest impact. So Fliss, we already kind of teased the folks. Tell me the story we both know has the biggest impact for today.
EVO 2015! EVO 2015! Oh man,
Woo!
The premier fighting game tournament every year has come and gone. And it was so hype, man. There's no other way to describe it. Just so hype.
Yeah. Hype is a term that's used pretty frequently in the FGC of fighting game community, and I agree. EVO 2015 was definitely one for the record books. This is the world's largest fighting game tournament. It happens every July in Vegas, bringing people from around the world. I'd say increasingly this is becoming an international tournament, as we can see from a lot of the top 8s of the events. So yeah, everyone gets together at this Vegas venue. There's thousands of people there. I think over 10,000 people are there. They've got setups of probably every fighting game in existence going on. There's the main tournament, side tournaments. There's a huge streaming schedule. I think they had 9 streams this year at any given point in time.
It was incredible.
And just, you go from thousands of entrants, and you get down to Sunday finals of the top 8, and oh man, EVO is something that since 2011 I've watched pretty much from start to finish. Kind of when I renewed my passion for fighting games, when I started playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3, my favorite, one of my favorite fighting game just franchises there. But EVO is just filled with great moments and great skill, and I think we like to talk about digital sports here on the Impact Factor.
I think you mean eSports.
Yeah, well, eSports or competitive gaming, whatever you want to call it.
I want to call it eSports.
Yeah. But EVO is just a great display of the highest level of fighting gameplay you can see. So, Fliss, what were you able to watch? What were some of your takeaways from EVO? Other than, obviously, it was awesome.
Well, for me, I watched the games that I am actually the best at that they feature at EVO, which is Guilty Gear XRD, and...
it's Guilty Gear Xrd.
Yeah, whatever.
Hey,
right.
No, I was listening.
I'll say it my wrong way.
No way.
Way.
I was listening to other podcasts, and everyone was like, "Oh, I love EVO. They were playing Guilty Gear X," and I'm like, "No, because you don't even know the name of the game. It's Guilty Gear Xrd."
Okay, well, I just read it and I play it, and since I live in rural Japan, I have no one else to correct me on what I say for it online. So I enjoy it. It's a great game. And then I also watched lots of a game that I know I can pronounce correctly, which is Street Fighter 4.
Yeah. So we'll get into all of them. So there are a ton of big moments. The first day, EVO is a 3-day event. You have a Friday, which is your pools play for a lot of different games. So Friday usually, at least these past couple of years, Friday was all Street Fighter pools. As well as other pools going on, and I think that was really exciting. For me, I was watching Street Fighter pools, and then I tuned in for the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax finals. I just wanted to check it out. I like Persona. People on the podcast know. They're in the know. They know where I'm coming from.
They probably read your blog post.
Yeah. Persona 4.
Where you just gushed about Persona.
Well, I mean, how could I not? But that was actually they're pretty cool. I was pretty excited, pretty happy with those finals. It's very fast and kind of reminded me a little bit of Marvel with the kind of crazy combos. And then Saturday is more pools and some additional finals. So on Saturday, of course, I was watching Marvel Baby, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. As well as I saw the Smash Wii U finals, which was just complete dominance by Zero, who is this Chilean player, who is just hasn't lost a set since November, I believe, in Smash Wii U.
So actually, this is a great moment. Let's start with Smash. Let's start by talking about Smash.
All right, let's start
so
Smash.
What did you get to watch any Smash during EVO? Did you watch any live streams? Did you catch up on YouTube? Because of the time difference, I spent most of my time catching up on YouTube.
Yeah, so I watched live because I live in America. Because I don't know.
Oh man, I can hear the freedom in your voice. I can hear the freedom.
Got freedom to watch the streams as they play live. Yeah, so I was actually,
never sing on this podcast.
Yeah, no,
again.
Okay. I was actually impressed with Smash Wii U. It was actually relatively exciting. It's a slower game than Melee, but the final's good, and there's some good character diversity, and they're using custom moves, and so I watched some of the pools of that, and definitely watched the finals. But then, yeah, I definitely tuned in live for the Smash Melee finals, which actually had the second highest viewership at entirety of EVO. It's a huge event. It's only getting bigger, which is crazy. Melee is like a 10-year-old game. But the finals were great. They're always really tense and hype, and you can tell like that the scene has been around for a while because like the same kind of people are always in the top 8 because they're just clearly the best. I was really excited. I was rooting for a guy named Hungrybox. He didn't win.
I always root for Hungrybox. Always root for Hungrybox.
People think his Jigglypuff play is lame, but I think it's pretty great. I think it's pretty.
You will recall. We're going to give a little background here, but Alex will recall that when Melee first came out, I was a believer in Jigglypuff. My green headbanded Jigglypuff made quite a few appearances during our high school days playing that game, and everybody gave me crap about this. And yet, Hungrybox made Jigglypuff amazing.
Yeah, pretty much the only person. Yeah, pretty much the only person. But then, yeah, let's get into the Sunday finals then. So you're talking about Guilty Gear Xrd. This is probably the finals that has made the biggest biggest impact outside of just the fighting game scene.
This is gonna be, if not my favorite moment of this year's EVO 2015, then very close to my favorite moment, because this was just amazing, man. Like, you get into this, and the super costly mistake at the expense of a Japanese player, which I'll admit I took some joy in, especially given how well the Japanese did at EVO.
Well, the Guilty Gear top 8 were 7 Japanese players and 1 American player who got eliminated immediately.
Well, Guilty Gear, much more popular in Japan than it is in America, hit Japanese arcades well before it hit what American arcades there are, let alone a release on console. I actually got to play it here in its first week of release at an arcade, which was great.
Yeah, so describe the moment that happened. So there's a player named Woshige, and he's playing against basically the oldest, like, the term that the community uses is God, but so essentially someone who's been in the Guilty Gear scene for a long time and has consistently proven that they're, like, one of the top players, named Sako. So what did Woshige have to do?
So Woshige was playing against Ogawa, as you covered, and he made this amazing comeback victory in the second round. So most fighting games are played in a best-of-3 format, and Woshige makes this phenomenal comeback against Ogawa. He does this, he's super pumped, and he, like, brings his arms right in the air and walks around on stage, and he's just, like, super duper pumped. And before he even realizes what's happening, Ogawa has restarted, set up the third and final round of the match, and he's already nailing this super long combo of Woshige taking his life bar almost all the way down. It was incredible. First, Woshige makes this amazing comeback, and then before you know it, he's already pretty much lost the third round and therefore lost the match.
Yeah, so it just seemed like he didn't count correctly. I guess he thought he won the set, but it was only one round out of two that he would won. And so,
right.
Yeah, but in a fast game like Guilty Gear, by the time he got back to his controller, he was already like 80% dead. And still in the middle of a combo. Oh, man.
And as we cover the growth of the legitimacy of esports, this actually made it onto ESPN's Sports Center.
Yeah, they were talking about it when they have the top 10 best and top 10 worst kind of plays. They talked about this and they showed footage, which is crazy to me. It's crazy. I think so. Guilty Gear is probably one of, like, the first fighting games to make on ESPN, like, to be shown on ESPN, which is crazy to me. Like, Guilty Gear, I would not have guessed.
No, it would definitely have not been my pick for the first fighting game to really break out on SportsCenter. But, I want to give credit to the commentators on ESPN for totally running with it and for cracking up and for enjoying the enthusiastic commentary that was given at EVO by some excellent commentators, actually.
Yeah, they were really good.
Game commentary, but they were really good. But, they rolled with it, and they made a great analogy, and I want to give credit to them for this because they likened it to something that so many football players do, which is dropping the football before they actually cross the end zone line, and therefore failing to score a touchdown. And I like this because this is putting it in SportsCenter, but that's putting the video game in a context that the majority of SportsCenter viewers will understand. That lets them know kind of how big of a screw-up this was. And I like that. I think that's a great way to kind of introduce fighting games as, like, this is a sport, this is important, this mess up, this early celebration is the same kind of, like, throw your head into your hands, like, sob away that your team or your favorite player is doing this kind of mistake. And I think that was great.
Yeah. And so not to get into too many specifics here, but EVO was so excited. The finals, they were great. But I think anybody, you honestly should tune in. It's so much fun. It epitomizes, like, the highest skill, craziest competition, unlike so many other competitive games that are played as in eSports, like, even including Hearthstone and Here's the Storm. I think one of the key advantages of, watching competitive fighting games is they look nothing like when you and your friends are playing. As a person who's, intimately involved with both Hearthstone and Here's the Storm, and I know what's going on, and I can play at least in Hearthstone, and play at a decently high level, I can understand that the skill that the professionals have, but it just doesn't look that impressive. Whereas fighting games, like, you watch and you're like, what the heck? Like, people can make these crazy combos and, like, can zero to death people in, like, a second. Like, that's crazy. When I showed one of my friends in my PhD program some competitive Street Fighter, he's like, whoa, so people don't just button mash? I'm like, yeah, no, there's, like, a lot more to it. Like, if you button mash, these people will kill you in, like, a second.
Probably less.
Yeah, probably less. But we can't talk about EVO 2015. We got to wrap this up because we have so much to talk about today without talking about the Street Fighter finals.
Before we wipe it out, I was going to say, we have to talk about Street Fighter. I'm not letting you out of this before we talk about the Street Fighter finals because they were incredible. Tell me you don't agree.
No, they were the best finals I think I've probably ever seen. They were, oh my god, the most dramatic, most tense, most skill-intensive, most calculating and intelligent and technical. Any kind of, they were just perfect. So let's talk about the losers finals and the grand finals, especially. So the losers finals, so the winner of which plays the person in the winner side of the bracket in the grand final, was between a Korean player named Infiltration and a Taiwanese, I believe, player named GamerB. And this was a very intense set where GamerB was using a character that could heal, and so essentially to win each round, Infiltration had to basically kill his character twice because of all the healing that was happening. And it's tense and back and forth and all about spacing and all about poking and reading your opponent correctly. And it was a grueling set where at the end, Infiltration pulled out a surprise character no one knew he played and came back. It was down to the wire. They each were 2-2, final round, final set. It was so intense and so, slower than normal gameplay, but clearly highly technical, highly thought out, and just so dramatic. And at the end, GamerB pulled it out, and oh man, the crowd erupted. The crowd was going crazy. Infiltration, it's one of the best players of Street Fighter 4. I think you can't, inarguably.
No question.
And it was just a great, tense, amazing set that really had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. And that was losers finals. So then that brings us to grand finals, Fliss, if you'd like to tell us about. Now, the winner was Momochi, a player from Japan, versus GamerB.
Yeah, man. Well, those winners finals, I don't know. I was just too overwhelmed. So I was cheering for Momochi because as much as I like to give the Japanese players a hard time, first of all, I was rooting for Infiltration. So having seen him get taken out, I wanted to see Momochi get revenge and take GamerB down. I'm honestly, I think you have to take us through this one because I'm honestly just still too overwhelmed by it to accurately describe what happened.
So after beating Infiltration in that very close set, GamerB was the crowd favorite. Everyone was cheering, going crazy. Except for Fliss apparently. I guess he wasn't watching it live, so he didn't believe like the rest of us.
Were you believing?
I was believing. I was #believing on Twitter.
So would you call yourself a believer?
No, believer. But anyway, so one of the main disadvantages of being in this loser bracket like GamerB was he had to win 2 best 3 out of 5 sets against Momochi to win, whereas Momochi just had to win 1.
Which we refer to as resetting the bracket. So if you do get a chance to watch it, when they're saying, oh, he has to reset the bracket, that's what they're talking about. And
he fights, and it's a very close battle, and he pulls out a character that people have pretty much always thought wasn't that good, but someone he really made looked good, a character named Adon. And GamerB fights back, and it's really close, and he gets down to the final round, and he resets the bracket, and everyone's going crazy. And they go back and forth some more, and they get to the final, their final game, where it's tied 2-2. They each have taken a match. Momochi's up 1 round. The match starts, and then all of a sudden, Momochi's controller pauses, which sets everything on fire. So this is not supposed to happen. If you pause, obviously, as you can imagine, if you pause in a fighting game, you can completely throw off your opponent's pacing, their mindset, even, especially if they're attacking you, they could throw off the timing and their combo. And so, evil rules state that if your opponent pauses, for whatever reason, you take the round. The person who didn't pause gets a free win. And so, that's dramatic already, because this is a highly tense, highly technical set. And it ties it up, so it's 1 round apiece. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even accidentally pause. Momochi's controller broke mid-set.
What a thing to have happen.
Oh my god.
At the last stage of the highest level.
So, he got a new controller, and then it was close, but then Momochi closed it out. Fans were going crazy, but that controller malfunction put such a damper. Momochi, you could tell. Obviously, GamerB felt bad because he didn't win, but Momochi wasn't also not able to fully celebrate because that's a crazy thing. But I guess thank God it didn't happen. If that wasn't the final round, because what if that had happened on a final round and then that's how it ends? GamerB takes it off of that technicality.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the equivalent of a bases loaded, infield fly in baseball, just completely anticlimactic, but not what we expected. It certainly blew me away. Just too. I don't know. It's just not what you expect. You hate to see a technical thing get in there, but like you said, I'm just really glad it was not the last set because the rest of that match was just incredible. You need to watch it to understand. Yeah,
and Momochi did a similar thing as Infiltration where he pulled out a character. He'd been playing Ken the whole tournament, But then he pulled out an evil Ryu, which nobody really knew he played, to kind of try to counter some of Gamerbeat. So that's crazy. Like, he pulled out a surprise character, and then, oh man, it's back and forth. We've talked about it too long. EVO is really, really exciting. If you watch nothing else, watch the losers and grand finals for Ultra Street Fighter 4. It's probably the best set I've ever seen. The best 2 sets I've ever seen. So do yourself a favor and watch that. All right, Fliss, we got to move on.
You're killing me, man. All I want to talk about is EVO. Distract me. You better have something. You better have something good to distract me from all my love of EVO.
All right, let's talk more fighting games. That's clearly what the people want. More fighting games. So at EVO, we got more Street Fighter V news. Woohoo! Street Fighter V revealed its kind of core tenet. They had a panel at EVO, and they revealed some core design tenets, some core design philosophies, and they revealed their plans for DLC. Which has been a huge part of at least Ultra Street Fighter 4. So let me run you through just a general thing and we'll get talking. For the first time, Capcom promised that this Street Fighter V, the version you get, will be the version you need for the rest of Street Fighter V's lifetime. So unlike Street Fighter 4, which was like Street Fighter 4, then Super Street Fighter 4, then Ultra Street Fighter 4, then Ultra Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and then whatever it's at now.
It was Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, Ultra Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4, whatever edition that they have now.
Yeah, so basically you had to keep on buying new editions, go crazy. But this one, they have said that Street Fighter V is it's not a game, it's a platform which they're going to build. So that's great. So all balance changes and all these character redesigns are going to be free. They announced that there's going to be 16 characters at launch, which I think is a pretty respectable number, especially as one of their core design philosophies they talked about is they're making each character feel unique. No more clone characters. Each character feels completely different from every other character, which is awesome. But then it wouldn't be, Street Fighter or really any game nowadays without some downloadable characters. And they announced that new characters are going to be added bit by bit, as opposed to what they did with Ultra Street Fighter 4, where they announced here's 5 new characters. By this new edition, it's a new balance change and 5 new characters. Now they're going to piecemeal release one character at a time, and they took inspiration from the free-to-play market. And so you can buy all DLC, all Street Fighter DLC, you can buy with in-game currency that you own, which is crazy to me. So your in-game currency is called Fight Money, which you can earn in-game by doing different activities, such as, my fight money, my fight money.
My fight money!
You can earn it in-game, and it can be used to buy characters, costumes, any kind of DLC. Assuming it's going to be like these free-to-play games, like Hearthstone or like Here's the Storm. It's probably going to take a lot of work to earn the currency, and you might not have enough currency to buy every single thing at once, even if you play a lot. And so they've got Zenny, which is your premium currency, and you, instead of buying characters with money, you buy the currency with money, and then you can use that premium currency to buy characters as well. And so that's clearly inspiration. There's 2 different currency models. It's something free-to-play uses all the time. Fliss, what do you, before I get into it, what do you think about this DLC plan?
I am hopeful about this DLC plan. The constantly re-releasing new editions, like we talked to, where we couldn't even keep which one came after which one straight, was a real pain, to be straight about it. And the biggest problem about that was the rebalancing of the characters, because even if you didn't want new characters, you wanted your characters rebalanced. You wanted to play in the same competitive market. And speaking of that, right, if you wanted to play online, you needed the latest edition, or you would be stuck playing with the people who were on the old edition with you. So keeping it all on the same level is great. Having characters that you can buy or not buy and having various ways to buy them is great, because that means that you can play the game forever with your 16 base characters. And if you never have a need for another character, you don't have to worry about it. But if all the characters really are purchasable with in-game currency that you can earn without spending any real money, that's fantastic. That's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I saw some people initially mad about it, but I'm like, this to me is great, because something like Street Fighter, previously you would have to buy up to buy the new balance patch, because otherwise you're not going to be playing with anybody online anymore. And then also that the new balance patch is what's going to be used in tournaments going forward. And then if you're in a Street Fighter, you're going to be buying these characters. I know I bought 2 of the expansions at least. I think I started with Super Street Fighter and then bought 2 or 3 of the expansions going forward. And so this is great. Even if it only saves me a couple bucks, because I still envision myself probably not being able to play enough to have enough in-game currency to buy the DLC characters. It's still nice that I'll probably be able to buy some in-game characters with my in-game, with my fight money, or certainly could buy some costumes with my money, and that's awesome. So it's free DLC. It rewards you for playing, which is awesome.
Right, and that's actually something that I want to talk about here, which is that in a game that requires this much dedication, this much practice, this much time to get good at, any incentive that says we're going to reward you for putting more time into the game is great to me. Yes, make my grinding, make my 100 Hadouken a day worth more to me, because I can earn DLC with it. I mean, look, I freely admit this. I probably shouldn't, but I do freely admit that I love costumes. I love skins. I love new characters. And I love getting them. And if I can get them by grinding away, and if that can be something to motivate me to keep going, to get good at this game, yes, please.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think just don't be like your cheap self and like try to earn everything by playing strictly free to play, because you already have to invest the $60. I don't want to be playing with new characters and you're like, well, maybe if I play 2 more weeks I can buy the new DLC character. Oh man, this kid.
Man, I'm totally gonna quote that back at you. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen on this podcast. You're gonna be like, "Oh man, Fliss, let's talk about this new DLC character," and I'll be like, "Oh well, I have to wait 2 more weeks before I can play with him because I don't have enough of my fight money, and I'm not buying Zenny like you, moneybags."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if Street Fighter V it looks to be the game that it seems like it is already, I'm gonna probably invest some money in the DLC because it helps to support Capcom, who's not doing so great. And I'll probably use my in-game currency for costumes and stuff. But they haven't really detailed how you're going to be earning fight money. I hope they take some inspiration more from something like Heroes of the Storm than Hearthstone. I think, God, I really hope they don't have win this many games online as a way to earn fight money, because winning games online is not easy. But I'm hoping it's like play 3 games as a Shoto character, or, play 10 games online as Birdie or something like that. So this rewards you for playing, not necessarily for like being good.
Yeah, and I certainly hope that there will be fight money rewards for doing things like beating arcade mode with each character, and then beating arcade mode with 10 characters, or beating arcade mode with all of the original characters, or things like that, where getting a high score on destroying the cars or whatever, like playing the different game modes and doing that, in a kind of Batman like way, right, where you have all these other challenges that exist in the Batman universe. I would think it'd be nice to get fight money for doing that kind of thing, for the bonus kind of thing. Fighting games are notoriously slim, and I think that this could be a good way to flesh it out.
Yeah, and I agree. I think for this to succeed, they need to reward you with fight money for whatever you do, whether it be training mode or single player mode or the extra modes or online modes. And I think so they should have default set, like a list of all these things you can earn fight money from, and then daily or weekly fight mode challenges, which could be more online focused. But again, I think emphasizing winning in that would be a mistake, because it's, for someone who played probably over 100 games of Ultra Street Fighter 5, Ultra Street Fighter 4 online, and won less than 25, it's not easy to win when you're playing against these really good people online. So,
certainly not. But hey, more Street Fighter 5 news, right?
Yeah,
There's gonna be a new character. What?
Necalli.
Dude, he looks so awesome. And also, can we talk about how great our predictions were last week?
Yeah, well, we don't know the origins of Necalli. Right, we don't know. I can't call it, but yeah, we were right. Brand new character, feral warrior. He fights with like clawing his opponents, and he's got a Super Saiyan mode for his V trigger, and he just looks crazy and fast and aggressive. And he has a dive kick and a command grab. He looks insane. He looks awesome. I love the way his hair is animated, kind of Street Fighter V, taking advantage of the more powerful system to have lots of stuff going on. Watch the trailer. He looks awesome. Fliss.
Yeah, I'm just super excited. I've got nothing but hype. I know I constantly criticize games media for being too hyped about games, but I'm just, on a personal level, so excited about Street Fighter V, and Necalli is yet another reason for me to be so excited about it.
I know, he's a very cool character. He looks to do a lot of stuff differently. He doesn't look like any other character before him. We didn't get a lot of details, but kind of people who are in the know have been picking apart his reveal trailer, seeing what they saw about him, like whether or not what kind of moves he has, and he just looks cool. So I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited they're bringing new characters. Out of the 16, 4 will be brand new characters to the franchise. So that's exciting. And then lastly, At EVO, there's a panel. They revealed some of their design philosophy at this panel. I think they're just everything they've done. I'm just going to run through a quick list, and then we can finish this up. But everything it looks like they talked about is something I think they needed to do to fit into the current modern game scheme. I think everything they need to do to fit into more of an esports competitive gaming scene, and then just for moving Street Fighter forward as a bigger franchise. So from the one slide here, they have lessons learned, and so in terms of character balance, they said that they kind of large characters, they want a diversity of characters in each tournament, and that instead of what most games do, including Ultra Street Fighter, and nerf a lot of things that are effective, they want to buff characters that are less effective, which I think is a much more compelling and a much more interesting way to go about changing stuff, because it sucks when you have something that's fun and powerful, and fun because it's powerful, and they're like, well, no, quit having fun that way, you can no longer do that. Try to learn something else that's less effective, which is always like a bummer. I hate how there's so many nerfing, which are to make weaker, is so prominent in every kind of game. I'd much rather buffing. I know it's harder from a design standpoint, but I appreciate it. So if this is true, I'm excited for that. They took community feedback into consideration, and they're constantly going to be incorporating community feedback into balancing. Let's see what else here. There's so much. One of their design pillars is that Street Fighter V is easy to play. So if you hear one person say anything like a hardcore gamer, like why they're not into fighting games is because fighting games are too hard. And so really they're trying to make Street Fighter V easier to play. So there's an input buffer now, and so it's much easier to put in your commands and have them come out as you want, and much more straightforward. And so they're really kind of trying to simplify combos, simplify inputs, and make it less about being physically able to pull off combos and more just knowing when to pull them off, which I think will lead into our next story. But, so, this last little bit here, and then Fliss, I see you jumping at the bit to get into the next story, is that their four main things. Is they want to create a battle system that puts a spotlight on characters, which is great in this hero shooter, MOBA-filled world we live in. They want to highlight on focusing on their personalities, which we've talked about it before, but this V-skill system makes every character play very differently from one another. They want to lower the execution hurdle, make it easier to play, difficult to master, which is great, and then take what they've learned and apply it. So I think Street Fighter V is shaping up to be awesome. They've got the beta, which starts today. I think it's already live, so why am I recording this podcast? It just has me so excited. It has me excited that Capcom and the people behind this team know what's happening and are trying to adapt to it. Ooh, I talked a lot. Fliss, you can finish this up and then lead us to our next story.
Well, I just want to say that you're talking about this character-driven world that we live in with MOBAs, with, all these other kinds of things that are going, where you buy heroes, where you do things like that. And I love this. I love character-driven stuff. I hope Street Fighter V moves in that direction. And I like the idea of lowering the execution hurdle, because I want to be able to sit down and play fighting games with everybody, because I love fighting games. That's something you just wrote about on the Impact Factor, right? That we love fighting games, we want to share them with people. And that's part of why I thought that this was one of your best posts ever on the Impact Factor.
Oh, thank you, man.
Check that out. Check that out, everybody. But yeah, so speaking of lowering the execution hurdle and making fighting games more accessible, Seth Killian, legendary in the Street Fighter scene. I mean, the villain of Street Fighter 4 is named after him.
Yep. Well, he was one of the lead design consultants on Ultra Street Fighter 4. Or in Street Fighter 4
and now he's designing a new fighting game. And while you may have spent your hard-earned money or done a false pre-order on Amazon to get into the beta of Street Fighter V, I have just signed up for the alpha of Rising Thunder, Seth Killian's new fighting game. And what makes this game so different, at least in its design concept, from every other fighting game out there, is it is specifically designed for PC. And accompanying that, all of your special moves, all of your executions can be done with one button press. So very much more like a MOBA kind of control scheme, where you have, each button doing a different move with a cooldown timer. You can now do that, but in a fighting game. And to me, I kind of have trouble actually imagining how that would play, especially since I don't want to play a fighting game on a keyboard. To be honest, I want to play it on a controller. So I'm kind of curious about how that would play on controller. I may have to invest in an Xbox controller in order to play controller on my PC, but I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to soil my hands with an Xbox controller. let our PlayStation biases fly high here.
Right.
I'm willing to do that because I really want to see what this game is about. And so I've seen the footage, I've seen the kind of preview trailer for it, and obviously we're in pre-alpha right now. The alpha has not been released yet. You can sign up for the alpha at risingthunder.com, so check that out if you're interested. But it looks cool. The characters, just talking about a character-driven world, they kind of look like Rock'em Sock'em robots. They're not particularly interesting, but I think we're still so early that it's hard to make judgments about that, right? Like, that's just what they've kind of revealed right now. And I also agree with criticisms that the name kind of sounds like a World War II tank game and not a fighting game. But you know what? Let's see it out. And, if the controls are good enough, I guess I can live with Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Yeah, so it looks cool. This is Seth Killian. He's such a figurehead in the fighting game scene. He's behind Street Fighter IV. He consulted on PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. He's making this new fighting game, Rising Thunder. It looks cool. I don't know if you mentioned, but it's completely free to play. So once it's in its alpha now, and I'm sure it'll be a later alpha and then a beta and whatever release. But it's completely free to play. They promise that future characters will be free, and that the only paid content is going to be cosmetic stuff. Yeah, it looks cool. I would have signed up for the alpha, but I think it's actually just Windows PC only. So unfortunately, can't jump in on that one.
Maybe someday you will buy a real computer.
Yeah. I'm also skeptical playing a fighting game with on a keyboard, because Seth Killian himself said it actually feels more comfortable to play on a keyboard than it does a controller, which kind of it blows. I can't even understand it, but I'm sure it's just a learning curve like anything else. But so smart to kind of get to the very basics. It's kind of an expansion of what we saw with something like Dive Kick, where Dive Kick was literally just a 2-button fighter, a dive and kick button. This has several more buttons, but it's just one button. So instead of having to do, quarter circle forward, 3-button presses, it's just one tap, and then you pull off a special move. And I disagree with you in the aesthetic. I think it kind of looks cool. It kind of looks like a Pixar-y kind of robot-y stuff. And I watched some fights between them, and the robots kind of give pretty good personalities. Like one guy, when he wins, he sits down and a flag comes out, shoots out of his head, and starts flying. I'm excited about it.
One guy is controlled by a dog. I mean, that's awesome. But I just think the character models, as they are right now, and I understand that there's room for improvement because this is alpha. It's just the character models as they are right now are kind of bland.
Yeah, but this is really cool. It's one of those things that makes me excited for kind of the future of fighting games. Seth Killian's a smart guy. If I have any way to try this out, I absolutely will. Please be excited. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, if the gameplay is good enough, the characters will follow eventually.
Yeah, exactly. So, and probably our one piece of news that won't be fighting game related here, there's a ton of new Hearthstone info. As I kind of teased at the start of the show, there was an announcement yesterday, it happened in San Francisco at the Foundry. Big new expansion. We all called it new expansion, the Grand Tournament. It's 132 new cards. They're launching, one of the central themes of this set is a new mechanic called Inspire, which whenever you use your hero power, activates an ability on your card. It's launching next month in August, so that's really soon. And they announced that there's going to be a pre-order if you want to. You can pre-order 50 packs for a discounted rate and get a card back. So, Fliss,
are you going to do it? Are you
I
might. It?
I might. I was probably going to buy packs anyway, and these are really discounted. They're pretty discounted packs, so it's like saving money, and so I might. I haven't made up my mind about that yet.
Well, I am not going to pre-order it. I'm not going to spend money. I only spend money on single-player adventures in Hearthstone. So I'm not 100% free to play, but I'm pretty close on Hearthstone.
Just $30 at this point, right?
Yeah, and I'm excited. It looks great. The cards they've revealed already look like they're going to completely change the meta, and that's only having revealed 10 cards.
I hope that they actually do, because this meta has been pretty stale for a long time now, with one deck clearly being the best deck for 10 weeks. So I'm really hoping this can shake it up. And 132 cards, I think, is a good way to shake things up.
Yeah, and it looks like they're really running with the tribal theme, which is great because I love tribal decks, and hopefully we'll see some more dragons. They've already revealed one dragon, so hopefully that can maybe make some of the BlackRock tribes that never really took viable. and just I like the idea of making hero powers more central, right? Because when you were first kind of teaching me Hearthstone to a certain extent, you were saying to me, anytime you can do something instead of your hero power, you're probably better off doing the thing that's not your hero power. And that's become less true as more cards have been released, but it's still kind of true that the hero power has been a last resort. So making the use of the hero power more tactical is something I'm all about. I'm all about making the game more tactical. I'm all about making your decisions rather than your deck what wins and loses games.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for that too. Because, like you said, the hero powers are one of the key things that set the different classes apart from each other. And yeah, obviously you're going to be using it sometime throughout the match, but you don't often use it too much, or if you have extra mana, you'll do it. But here you're having cards that really incentivize using this hero power, and that's really cool. And it kind of changes the way games will go. Yeah, this dragon card you mentioned lets you cast your hero power an unlimited number of times during your turn if you have the mana, which is really cool. If you had a mage, you could do 5 damage with your hero power on turn 10. That's really cool.
Changes the game. And anything that changes the game and shakes it up is exciting. So this is going to be great. Please be excited.
Yeah. So it's 132 new cards. We don't know. Yeah, we know 10 of them so far, maybe 12. They're revealing new cards as they have before on their website. You can vote which one you want, and we'll see. So who knows? They didn't say when in August it's going to be revealed, but it looks really exciting. I'm really hoping it shakes up the game, because BlackRock did shake up the game, but not in a great way. It only made one new deck, and that one new deck is crazy overpowered. Oh man,
unless you draw Flame Strike at just the right time.
Yeah, right. I was playing a game yesterday, and we can talk about those experimental methods if we want. And I was they were down to 5, and then they did 40 points of damage to me in one turn. So that's fun.
Ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Fun. But yeah, so it was cool. The event was cool. They had some show matches. They showed off the new cards, and Hearthstone has a great sense of humor. It's kind of funny. They take all these very serious World of Warcraft things, which always kind of make me laugh because looking at these characters and their names, and especially the voice actors, I'm wait, is this supposed to be so serious? But Hearthstone it has a light-hearted spin on everything, and looks fun. It's great. We now know officially what's happening. The Grand Tournament. New cards coming soon. I'm excited.
Yes, and I'm hoarding my gold. I'm hoarding my quest gold now to buy a whole bunch of packs when it comes out.
Yeah, man. How much do you have now?
160 because I just started hoarding today.
Oh, I'm up to 1900, so I should be pretty good.
I wish the folks at home could see the death glare I'm giving you.
I also have enough dust to craft at least 3 legendaries, so
I have never been able to craft a legendary.
So I'll be good. I'll wait to see what people think is the best card from the set, and I'll just craft it.
I have nothing but ire for people like you.
I'm well prepared, man.
Your ultimate punishment awaits you on a plane I cannot visit.
All right, go get to talking more eSports. I know you want to.
All right, man. Well, hey, we're running out of time in our news section here, but real quick, the International 5, the biggest Dota tournament, probably the biggest esports tournament, is coming to movie theaters at over 400 locations. So very cool. Great way to extend the viewership. If I were going to be in the United States, I would totally go and watch. Very, very cool. Great. We talked about a listener letter we got a couple weeks ago from Thomas F., and he wrote to us in the second half of his letter that he thinks that the biggest thing distinguishing esports and conventional physical sports is viewership and money being invested in it. So this is money being invested in it to expand the viewership. That's great. This is a big step for the international. It's a big step for the legitimacy of esports, and hopefully it'll get more people watching it.
Definitely. And as big as EVO was, the internationals, I don't even know how many times bigger. The viewership is crazy. So, yeah, that's going to be huge. I'm not going to go see it in theater, but I'm excited to watch it. And one last quick brief piece of news is that it's a news about news going to come. So there's Square Enix has been talking what their plans are for Gamescom, which is the E3 of Europe. Is that the public is invited. It's gigantic. I think 200,000 people show up to this thing. It's happening soon. I think it's in 2 weeks. And supposedly Final Fantasy 15 is going to spotlight their stage there and spotlight their presence there. And so everything is kind of teasing and leading up to them maybe saying that there's going to maybe be a release date. So I'm excited for that. So I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on Gamescom, as all of you should who follow the games industry. It's increasingly big. I mean, it's obviously always been big, but more publishers and more developers are bringing their stuff there. PlayStation won't be there this year, but I think I'm very excited to see what comes out of it. Final Fantasy 15, if they announce a release date, that would be crazy. I'm sure it's not going to be till 2016, probably like fall of 2016. But who knows? Who knows? Square Enix is a crazy company that, I don't know. They don't release Final Fantasy games. This game has been worked on for like 9 years or something. So,
and hopefully it'll come eventually with a custom PS4 as well.
Yeah. And Fallout Shelter, that mobile game, has made $5 million in 2 weeks. So, if you wonder why people make mobile games, that's why.
If you don't like mobile games, stop playing them.
Yeah. So that's it for news and views. We'd love to hear from the community the news items that you all thought had the biggest impact. So please feel free to shoot us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. So Fliss, it's now time to put things in perspective.
Perspectives.
Perspectives is part of the show, well, when any number of things can happen. In academia, it's when investigators share their opinions with the community at large. Here, it's a revolving section where we experiment with what's worth discussing. Usually, Fliss and I will pick out an editorial piece and discuss it together. But, for the first time ever...
This week, we introduce a new type of perspective section, one that we call foundations. Foundations are the groundwork upon which any research is based. They shape the experimenter, experiments, and our communities. On the Impact Factor, Foundations is a section where Alex or I will talk about a game, system, or experience that fundamentally shaped who we are as a gamer and as a scientist.
Alright, so introductions aside, welcome to Foundations, everyone. Fliss is going to get us started this week. So, Fliss, tell me about one of your foundations. One thing, though. No fighting games. the folks are sick of them. So, what is your foundation for this week?
Oh man, no fighting games. You're really gonna make me scrape the bottom of the barrel here. All right, well, actually, I'm gonna go with a game that might surprise you.
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the game.
That is scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Whoa, now, shots fired. We haven't even started yet. Remind me to dump all over your first foundation, buddy.
Oh, I fully expect it.
I'll leave a flaming paper bag on top of your foundation.
Yeah.
I'll let you discover what's inside.
I'll figure it out once I stomp on it. I'm sure it'll be innocent, like a piece of cake or something.
Yeah, that's right. Who doesn't like devil's food cake?
Devil's food cake, right?
All right,
well,
hey.
So run us why Sonic Adventure Battle 2 is this foundational game of yours.
Well, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is a game that both my younger brother and I played when it came out on GameCube. Now, it was an expanded edition of the original Sonic Adventure 2, and this game was a 3D Sonic, which is going to get me some hate, right? Because anytime you're like, oh, I like the 3D Sonic, everybody who, ever liked Sonic is just going to be like, ah! But last week, we had a great discussion about nostalgia, and I highly recommend that everybody at least tune into the perspectives section of last week's episode, where we really went in depth with our discussion of nostalgia. So nostalgia aside, what this game did for me is that it gave me an appreciation for a kind of fast-paced 3D game that was not necessarily a platformer, but was more of kind of like a Sonic level run style game, where you're fighting enemies, where you're trying to move it through the level quickly, where time is a factor, where your high score is a factor. And it really changed the way I thought about what a game should be. Because in addition to those kinds of levels where you're playing Sonic and running through this kind of a level, you also had levels with Knuckles where you were collecting gems. And this was kind of a treasure hunt kind of style that wasn't perfectly executed but was still fun. And what made that interesting for me is that Knuckles had always been one of my favorite characters in the franchise. And so I was kind of disappointed to not be punching things. But the more I played it, the more I enjoyed it. And so it kind of gave me a better idea of what I felt pacing in a game should do. So I think this game really gave me a taste of the desire for high scores, for beating a game faster. And we kind of see this in the larger community with speedruns. So I'm going to narrow this down. It gave me a taste for high score speedrunning. It gave me an idea of what pacing in a game should be. And it reminded me at a time when I was kind of starting to drift towards the Call of Duties and realistic action games of the world, that cartoon-based and kind of a comic book aesthetic was still super valuable in games.
It's true, and all of that would be valid if you could ever see what you were doing, because the camera is god-awful.
The camera is not in that game. That is true. You got me there. And I have to acknowledge that, right? Because I'm trying to not be nostalgic about this game and own its flaws. As hard as that is. So Sonic Adventure Battle, or Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, is a game I played as well, and had some good times with. I mean, there are certain levels that are fun. I think City Escape, if I'm thinking about the correct game, is I think a memorable. Is a level that anybody who's played will remember. It's pretty dramatic, and it has like that, it has that goofy song playing. Is it the rolling the city?
Yeah. The music in that game in general. And it's like fun. I mean, I think there are certain elements of that game that work, right? I think more so than any 3D Sonic game I've played, because most of them are complete steaming piles of garbage. Some of like the quick Sonic levels are actually fun to play in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. City Escape, I think, is one of them. We're capturing you're moving fast enough that you can really feel a sense of speed, but you can also anticipate what's coming. They had a lot of different things where they changed the angle and the perspective of the player. For the most part, Sonic controls all right when he's moving quickly and lets you feel a little bit like those Genesis Sonic games in a good way. And so I understand that, but I think it's interesting that you chose this, because there are so many strange design choices that go into that game. Like, for me, Knuckles was one of the worst parts of that game, because his levels were slow and plotting and explorative, which to me didn't feel anything like a Sonic game. And then you had the Rouge sections, or the Rogue, or whatever her name is, sections.
Rouge. They were just clones of the Knuckles section.
Yeah. And then and it's just, there's a lot there to like, but I think 3D Sonic and Sonic in general, beyond the Genesis days, he has a really hard time of being a compelling character and having compelling level design. And so it's interesting. So what do you there's a multiplayer element to Sonic 2 Battle. Is this did that shape any of your experiences with it?
Only barely. Most of what my multiplayer, if you want to say that, for this game was competing with my brother for high scores, running through levels.
All right.
And primarily the good levels, right? Like City Escape, and trying to... I mean, I don't think anyone who played that game will forget getting chased by that big rig at the end of that level.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It kind of felt
great.
like, oh my gosh.
Right? And it was the first time that happens, it's pretty surprising and pretty cool. I think, for me, part of the reason I chose this game is because 3D Sonic gets a lot of hate. And because I played 2D Sonic, and I still really like 2D Sonic, and I kind of want to believe that Sonic still has a place in the current gaming landscape. But I think that the games that have followed Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, like Sonic Heroes and even Sonic Unleashed. Yeah.
Have Sonic 06?
I didn't even play it.
It's good. It's not playable.
I think that those games followed kind of the mistake parts of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle that you kind of mentioned. I think that they were too slow. They were plotting. They lost that sense of speed. They didn't give you that sense of being in control or anticipating things. They didn't make it worthwhile to rerun a level to get a high score. They didn't make you want to compete with your friends to get those high scores. And I think that Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, for me, without getting too nostalgic, represents the moment where Sonic could have gone in two directions as a franchise, and it went in the wrong one. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that we could go back to Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and say, these are the good things we did in this game. Let's jump on a new platform and take these things and make a whole game with them. Like, can you imagine a whole game of City Escape style levels? That would be great. Even if it was just released, not as a full release, even if it was released as like a PSN game.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking. Like, that sounds like it could be fun, but it doesn't sound like a full release kind of game, you know? maybe like a $20 kind of Sonic game. But yeah, it's interesting to me. So do you have hope for a future? Because I think aside from some of the good parts of Sonic Adventure Battle 2, Sega has no idea with what to do with the 3D Sonic. And so it might have established some foundation, as we're talking about here, but it's a foundation that's been largely ignored and is, termite infested and crumbling and shaky, and it's hard to know. Do you think Sonic is still relevant, and do you think a game like this would still be compelling?
Do I think Sonic is relevant? No. I think that Sonic has lost his relevancy because I think that people who love Sonic are kind of resigned to Sonic games not being good. And I think that people who don't care about Sonic are just like, oh, Sonic, that's that guy that sometimes shows up on the cover of bad Mario games. I just don't think Sonic has his cachet anymore. But do I have hope? Yes. I have hope that someone at Sega will eventually remove their heads from a dark and small space and build us a good Sonic game. And I think that there's two ways they can do that. I think they can do that based on the Sonic Adventure 2 model, like kind of taking what worked in that game and leaving behind what didn't. And I also think that they could honestly just make another 2D Sonic and people would buy it. Again, I kind of think both of these are, like you just said, $20 PSN releases, but I think they would be a step towards making a real game. The other thing that I want to point out before we move on, and I know we're running out of time here, but that's that as kind of thin as it was, the story mode in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was still just compelling enough to make me want to finish it all the way through. And I think that gives kind of the opportunity to say, if we're going to make Sonic relevant again, we have to start writing him with a better story. We have to actually give us a reason to want to play a Sonic game to the end other than the gameplay is fun. We have to do something else. Because right now, Sonic as he is right now represents to me the decay that people fear about Mario, where it exists basically completely on nostalgia and no longer has any real game relevancy.
Well, it's what happens when Sega doesn't pay the respect to the character. I mean, you can only have so many bad released games, and honestly, Sonic hasn't had a good game since I don't even know what. I guess maybe if in your book, since Sonic Adventure Battle 2, or 2 Battle. And some people like Sonic Colors, I've heard, and some other ones. But yeah, for me, Sonic is a character that never really has that much nostalgic weight. I was never a Sega owner. I was always much more either Mario or Crash around the same time that people started to care about those characters. And so it's interesting. It's a name that still has some surprising cachet to me because there hasn't been a good Sonic game in probably a decade. If not more, or at least not one that's that's compelling. And Sega, I don't know, doesn't feel like it's once they got this Sonic Adventure 2 Battles. For me, I see it as a foundation of kind of as a game that's okay, but established like this foundation, like we talked about, for all these terrible games because it kind of, I think the bad parts outweigh some of the good parts and have kind of led for this era of these bad 3D Sonic games where they feel like nothing like Sonic games, and really Sega hasn't innovated in what it means to be a Sonic game, and I think that they need to kind of take a step back, give the character a rest, and rethink what it means to be Sonic in the current era.
I think we all know what it means to be Sonic, and I think that you already said it. It's you gotta go fast. You gotta have a sense of speed. Gotta go fast. And if you're not capturing that, the second you slow down, and you lose it, and so if you're not capturing that, you're not making the right Sonic game. You gotta go fast.
Fair enough. So look, that's great. That's great. I never would have expected a Sonic Adventure 2 Battle as a foundation. Would you put it in any kind of top games list of all time for you, or how do you view it contemporarily now?
I certainly would not put it in any of my top games of all time list. Absolutely not. How do I view it? I view it as a very treasured game from my childhood. It's a game that I do not want to go back and play because I don't think it would stand up to who I am as a gamer now. But I think that, kind of like we talked about, for me, it reminds me what the character might have been and what I someday hope he could be.
Great, yeah, and it certainly creates this interesting home console / arcade hybrid of score chasing and level creation. It almost feels like, in the best levels, like something you'd play at an arcade. which I think is a strength that never really got capitalized on.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I mean. So that's where it sits for me.
Awesome,
it's kind of
great.
a game of longing for what might have been.
Yeah, man. I know at least my little brother, too. He loves Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, so it's got a place in a lot of people's hearts. So it's great. So this is the first take of Foundation. Fliss, you have your Foundation of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. But before we end this perspective section, you commented here a little bit on nostalgia and trying to view this with a critical eye, but at the same time acknowledging the influence it had on you. And we got a great piece of listener feedback about our discussion last time on our perspectives about nostalgia. So there's a lot to get into here. We probably can't get into everything, but Fliss, let's run through a couple things that this great comment said about our discussion about nostalgia. Again, that you could check that out in our last episode. It's episode 11, which is up on our SoundCloud.
And the title of that episode was Nostalgia is Bad Poop. And our listener, Bullet Babe, did not agree necessarily with us. She thought that nostalgia as a barrier to entry, that is to say referential works, with having those references as part of the nostalgia that they're creating, can create this barrier to entry, but that can work both ways, and that they can turn off the audience from trying to investigate it, or it can kind of give places for a curious reader, listener, or gamer to explore and to explore the history of it. And so I think that that's what the author of Armada and Ready Player One kind of wanted to achieve, and what we kind of thought he didn't. And the reason, and again, Bullet Babe unpacks this really well when she says that it's important that the art be able to stand alone without the audience having prior knowledge, but if it's got a condescending tone, that totally turns the audience away. So I think we were arguing last time that these books have that condescending tone where if you don't understand the references, if they're not links, if you will, to deeper exploration, it's just a wall that if you can't surmount, you can't understand.
Agreed. And I think it's true, yeah. I mean, obviously, referential works and nostalgia aren't all bad. I mean, obviously, all forms of entertainment and media and art are inspired in some way by other works of art. But I think it gets into dangerous territory, like Bullet Babe mentioned here, this condescension tone. But I think, for me at least, I get set off a little bit about nostalgia sometimes too, when it not only is condescending, but is pandering. I think not necessarily are these references made to act in a vein of superiority, though obviously they are often used that way with knowledge capital that we mentioned. But I think often they're used as pandering, like, because we have this shared connection, you'll agree with me and you'll stick with me and you'll give me your support or your time or your money because we have this thing in common. And I think that's a dangerous and frankly insulting territory. It's like, oh hey, I referenced Star Wars in this movie, so here, this is like, go see my movie. So I think a chief example of some of this pandering / easy out is this new Adam Sandler movie, Pixels, which apparently is a steaming, festering pile, carcass of just of a movie of the worst kind, which, you know, looks to have all these, like, you know, 80s arcade characters, but used shamelessly, just in a way, like, instead of using someone like Pac-Man or Donkey Kong in an interesting way, it's more just, hey, look, here's Donkey Kong. You remember him, right? We both remember him, so we're friends now. Go see my movie. And I think you can see stuff similarly with that, with these Ernest Cline books, as well as in games. And I think it's a dangerous level that kind of, again, and nothing else feels insulting as someone who is appreciative of video games as this kind of art form and as this entertainment form, as well as someone who also often appreciates these references. I can appreciate a Star Trek reference, but I don't want you to try and use a Star Trek reference to sell me on something, or to act as, like, using it just as referentially and not as a significant contribution to the final product.
And I couldn't agree more. I think that was the big problem with Star Trek Into Darkness, where they made this reboot in the first of the new Star Trek movies to kind of say, we have this new timeline, we're going to tell new stories. And then in the second movie here, in Into Darkness, all they did was retell the Wrath of Khan, but badly.
Yeah.
And so it was just a bad version of it. So it was tapping into this, oh, we saw this, we both watched the original Wrath of Khan, look at all these things that we're doing differently, except that the original Wrath of Khan was so good, why would you change anything? Mm-hmm. Right? So instead of being its own movie, It was just a bad version of something that was great.
Agreed. A commenter also brings up this question of originality, mentioning that there are no new stories or plot lines. Everything is life, death, love, sex, power, etc. She agrees that you could have new arrangements of those stories, but the distinction between originality and arrangement is helpful for understanding that. And then she brings up this great example of the alternative music industry, where the music has gotten more complex, harsher on the listener, and more jarring and discordant over time to kind of maintain interest, since the audience learns what to expect, these certain kind of musical patterns, and gets bored by them, and then references a great All Songs Considered podcast to listen to about that. And I think this point is important, and I think we're seeing that in video games in different ways. I think you can do conventional storytelling, like with what Klein does with Armada or Ready Player One or movies. But I think games explore story in such a different way because it's an interactive media, and I think there are new stories being told in different ways because of the way that the player experiences them. Journey is an example that comes to mind that tells a very subtle and personal story that you shape through your own experiences and through your own memories in a way that no other kind of media can shape for you, because there is no dialogue. You're just exploring this kind of beautiful, vacant desert and mountain, and I think games are more poised than ever to have to do stories in different ways that are not necessarily conventional stories. They're just like art pieces. So I could play a game like Jazz Punk, which is just completely abstract and really doesn't adhere to the conventions of storytelling at all. And then oftentimes you'll have games that have no plot lines at all. So I think in games, I think nostalgia in terms of a story perspective is not necessarily all that important, but more just using nostalgia and originality to, again, have cheap, easy ways of like, oh, you'll like this game because I do the same mechanics or because I reference this, and less so about like story in general. It's hard to kind of cohese my thoughts there, but Fliss, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make some great points about the way games work, and I want to talk about narrative here because I don't really agree with her. I think she makes a compelling argument, but I don't really agree. I think that, yes, you could say, okay, fine, everything is life, death, love, sex, and power, and all that other stuff, but I think that all of those are such complicated ideas that's just catch things such a wide net that, yes, okay, fine, if you cast the net that big, you're going to catch everything. Sure, but I think there's so many smaller stories, so many smaller experiences that are important to tell about, and I think that when we talk about Ready Player One, when we talk about Armada, we're talking about, like, what they're doing is they are literally telling us to experience their story through other stories. And when we take that to narrative games, I think that would be a huge problem, right? Like, you can't be playing through The Last of Us and hit a section where it says, okay, in order to understand this section, you have to have played something in The Legend of Zelda, right? Like, you have to understand that. Not only because those are two completely different genres, which, by the way, is something that I think Ready Player One is guilty of, but also because that completely knocks you out of the game narrative. And in games, when you're creating a narrative, like you just talked about, you have this experience as a player where you're making micro decisions. Not just making decisions of, do I shoot this person or do I help them, but decisions of, do I turn left here? Do I walk backwards? Do I go back and check that corner? You're making so many more kind of everyday life decisions on a moment-by-moment, second-by-second basis that I think the experience of narrative is so different that you have to approach it as telling new stories.
Yeah, I think the agency in video games is something that can't be understated. For as conventional as the storylines are in Telltale games, I feel like they're unlike anything I've played because I have such agency and decisions and shaping my character. And through the actions of my character and through mine and Justine's own thoughts, we interpret what happens in completely different ways than likely many other people who play the game. And I think it's a unique power of games. And so I think originality often comes internally, but I think games are smart when they are able to tap into using your own internal beliefs, ideologies, decisions, and using those to shape your experience with the game.
And I'm so glad you're talking about Telltale games because this represents such a great moment of crossover between traditional narrative and game narrative, right? Because the Game of Thrones Telltale games have you interacting as your character in the game with the world and the characters of a traditional narrative, of the books, right, of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire. And what's amazing for me, right, is that I am so frustrated and so angry about where the books are going right now. And don't even get me started on the show, which you hate talking about canon, so I won't get us started on that. But the show is,
it's its own thing. It's its own thing now.
Inarticulate.
It's its own thing now. Just you gotta accept that.
They're two different things. But I'm frustrated. There are moments in the books where I want to go in and change that, and I can't. I can't because the author has control of that world, and there's something joyful about surrendering your experience to join the world of the author. But the experience of being in that world and having agency, like you just talked about, having agency in that world is so cool. It's totally different. And I think it unlocks whole new worlds of storytelling possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's one last thing here. This is a great comment. We can't get into everything here just for time reasons, if nothing else. But she suggests,
gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. That perhaps for video games, there could be a separate grading system used to categorize nostalgia games versus everything else to effectively limit discussion. And I think that's a very interesting and a powerful system that I'd like to see implemented. And because it's hard to even put something like Mario 64 or Mega Man 2 or Super Mario World on the same scale as something like Shadow of the Colossus or Dark Souls or Batman Arkham Knight. They're so radically different. And so, like, obviously they're all great in their own ways. But I still think at the core, in the best games nowadays, the gameplay loop is as compelling as a gameplay loop in some of those older games, but then you also have all these extra accoutrements that make modern games modern with all this extra stuff you can do. And so I think it's really important. I think factoring in nostalgia into your discussions is important that we mentioned, and I think her suggestion here to have these kind of different scoring system or grading system or categorization system, some sort of system to say, like, look, this game is great, it was great then, it's great now, but it's great in a different way than something like The Last of Us. And I think that's important, and it's hard. I think I'll be interested to see if something like this does emerge eventually, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with her. I totally agree with you. I think that this is something that would encourage a level of self-reflection, right? A level of self-awareness to say, this game was amazing, but I have to put it in the nostalgia games, right? That it stops you even comparing them, right? You eliminate that comparison on your own. And I think that that's something that pretty much all gamers could use, including myself. I could absolutely use when I think about
Sonic
games.
Adventure 2 Battle is.
hey, I freely admitted, right? It's not on a top 10 list.
No,
it's
certainly not.
It's put away. It's put away in it probably, honestly, it probably doesn't even do that well on our nostalgia categorization.
Oh man! Right, speaking of this top list, though, it's that gets me tingling, man. We'll have to do that at some point. 2 top lists.
Yeah,
I love my top
fives.
I love my top fives. So there's a lot of great comments here, more than we could even get into. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and commenting on it, and really running through a lot of great thoughts on our discussion about nostalgia. And that's what we want. We want conversation is at the core of being a scientist, at the core of podcasts, and I think should be at the core of video games. And so the more conversations, the better.
Yeah, and absolutely, yeah. Bullet Babe, thank you so much for engaging with us on such a deep level, for challenging us and taking us to task about some of these ideas. And we want all of you out there to do the same. Please give us a shout out on Twitter. I'm at the C Fliss. He's at Alex Samocha. Or, even better, send us an email at impactfactorpodcast.gmail.com. At gmail.com. Please let us know. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what games are part of your foundations, or whether you think categorizing games in nostalgia and kind of a more conventional modern scoring system would be helpful, or why not? Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Any feedback would be great. All right, so now that our work is done and logged, let's get into our experimental methods.
Experimental methods.
In experimental methods, Fliss and I talk about the video games we've been playing recently. No papers or pipettes, cells or senses here, just our words. We look at what works, what doesn't, and what we're looking forward to testing. So Fliss, what experiments have you been running this week?
The same experiments I run every week.
Ooh, trying to take over the world?
Try to beat Demon Souls.
How's that going, man? And for all of you who haven't listened to our full catalog of episodes, and if not, shame on you, Fliss and I have a bet going right now. A bet that within 6 weeks from when we first announced it, so I guess that's 3 weeks ago now.
3 weeks now.
He would be able to beat Demon Souls. If he did not, he would have to buy me a sports cap, and vice versa. If you were able to beat it in 6 weeks, I would have to buy him a hat. So we're 3 weeks in now. Fliss, you're about halfway through, right?
Well, you're definitely in the lead on the bet. I've beaten 3 bosses, and I'm close to beating 2 more. There's definitely a slogging element that I'm starting to feel right now. I've played about 20 hours in the game, which is pretty solid, I think, over 3 weeks for me and the amount of time I have to allot to games. But I'm working on it. I've beaten 1-1, 1-2, and 2-1, and I have spent far too long trying to beat 2-2 before I decided to move on and try other things.
Flame Lurker says hello.
Yeah, man. I kept coming so close. So close.
He's definitely among the hardest bosses in that game. No. It's so funny, because once you beat him, the end boss of 2-3, he's so easy. He's a joke.
So I've got a question about the structure. Is it 4 levels per area?
So for the most part, you have your opening area, then your first boss, and then the next big open area, then your second boss, and then usually it's a very short stint with very minimal level to the third boss, and then most just have the 3. I think 2, 3, 4 worlds 2, 3, 4, and 5 all just have the 3 bosses and 2 main areas. So pretty much after you beat Flame Lurker, you're gonna be able to head immediately to the next boss and finish World 2. World 1, that's the Palace of Boletaria, or whatever it's called, is a little bit different. There's 4 zones for that. So there's 3 main zones, and then 4 bosses.
Right, and then once you finish those, do you unlock things within the Nexus, or is that kind of wrap up the game?
The Nexus kind of opens, and then there's one final boss in a special area that you can access via the Nexus once you beat all of the whatever they're called, the Lord Souls or the Demon. I don't know what they're called.
Archstones, right?
Once you clear the final boss of all the Archstones, I forget what they're called. They have some sort of archdemons or something like that.
Right.
So once you beat all of them, then you can finish up with the final boss, which I think is actually skippable if you feel going that route. So we'll see though. I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering incorrectly.
We'll find out. I'm making progress. I'm definitely learned a lot more about the game. The learning curve is slow, certainly, for me at least.
Yeah, it takes a little while. 20 hours though, you should be feeling it at this point.
I'm starting to feel. I think for me, the problem is that I am slow to break out of my kind of traditional RPG mode, where I'm just I'll just grind up and beat this, and that doesn't really work.
Yeah, no, grinding doesn't really do you much good. It'll help some, but not that much.
Right. There's a lot of item discovery. My biggest complaint, I want to be clear that I'm really enjoying the game. My biggest complaint is just that sometimes, especially in the second level of each world, it takes too long to get back to a boss fight if you die.
That's fair. Dark Souls kind of solves that problem with the bonfire system. Bonfires are usually pretty close to bosses. Yeah. Demon Souls, the trek can be a little long.
Right, there was a point where I died a bunch of times trying to beat Flame Lurker, and so I had this big pile of souls sitting down in Flame Lurker, and it was actually very freeing when I then died in a different area, and that pile of souls disappeared, so I didn't feel bound to keep going after it.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta give up on that bloodstain.
Yeah. So I don't know. We're gonna see the progress I can make, and then
all right.
I'll officially vacation.
Yeah, I'll officially here on this podcast. I'm gonna extend it. You've made good enough progress that I feel like you're giving an earnest attempt, and so I don't want to beat you on a technicality that you can't play for 2 weeks. So you have 8 weeks now. So that's end of August.
All right, and I will again to honor this. Right, I will mark out my 2 weeks where I'm not playing Demon Souls.
Feel free to play Demon Souls in those 2 weeks. I still think you're gonna have a hard time, but I'm trying to give you an earnest chance because I want to be able to get you a hat because I want you to be Demon Souls.
I want to give Alex credit here. I give him a lot of trouble in this podcast, but he has been nothing but helpful throughout my playthrough when I've just been dude, I have no idea what's happening in this area. or something like that, and just giving me the little hints about weapons or how to do things that, where he really could have led me astray in order to secure victory over his hat. He's not done that. So this guy has more honor than he would lead you to believe. Certainly.
No, I don't believe him. I'm a scoundrel.
Hey,
so we'll
those
keep
two
this
are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So we'll keep this experimental methods relatively brief because we've been playing mostly the same things. I wanted to talk about a new game this week, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to. But I finished Batman. I am done with Batman. I'm completely done. I have like 3 side quests left I could complete, but they're very grindy. Like one of them is the Riddler, so Fliss, I'm sure you know. I don't feel like collecting all... There's 243 Riddler trophies in this game. I've collected like 42 over the course of my PlayStation so far, so I'm not...
I mean, I don't understand why they don't make it... Maybe you can speak to this, but why don't they make it just like a nice number, like 200 or 100? Like, just round it up, make it a nice number.
I don't know, because they have a certain number of ideas for trophies, and then just whatever the number of ideas they have is the number of trophies there are. I don't know, but... So I have the Riddler quest left, and then there's these 2 quests, like 2 cleared in the street. There's a lot of like strongholds that you need that are either combat or predator challenges, and they're fine, but like there's a lot of them, and some of them are kind of like really painfully annoying. Like I said last time, I'm not the greatest at the combat, and so like one of these challenges had like 5 people with guns, 2 people with like electrified stun sticks, and like 2 brutes, which you can only like use like the beat down to finish. So like they're kind of like a pain in the ass to be able to beat. But I finished everything else. I saw like there's a special like kind of secret ending you can see if you complete enough of the side quests. I did that, not the complete one because that requires 100% completion. But no, I'm done, and I have a lot of thoughts. I'll be writing a review on the Impact Factor eventually, probably not next week. I really, really liked it though. Fliss, I really strongly suggest once you get a PS4, you should absolutely get Arkham Knight. It definitely wraps up the Arkham trilogy better. I mean, there's certain foibles with the Arkham games, like again, there's no civilians on the streets, and it very much emphasizes Batman as a brawler and less so as a detective, and Batman more so as a beat up bad guys and less about like saving the city. But there's a lot of really interesting things that I talked about last time, like with the side quests and the story and reality. And I thought the finale was perfect and definitely shaped for an interesting world. So one of my favorite games this year, certainly.
Oh man, excellent. Well, that's very exciting. I'm looking forward to playing it. It's pretty much a given now that I will be getting a PS4, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on it. I mean, I feel so bad for the PC players because it's a great game, and so it ran great on my PS4. I even heard that some people were having issues with Crest or consoles, but it always ran perfectly for me. So hey, definitely a buy. Hey, strong recommendation from a very experienced player.
So now we've wrapped that up. Any errata? This is a section where we talk about movies, TV life, etc.
Well, you just saw Ant-Man, right?
I did see Ant-Man last night. This is the new next installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're now officially in Phase 3, I believe, with the end of Avengers 2 and into Ant-Man. And Ant-Man is a movie I was really excited for at first because it was going to have Edgar Wright, who's one of my favorite directors, because he creates just these really wacky, crazy movies. Hot Fuzz is among my top 3 favorite movies, probably, if not my favorite movie of all time. But then he got kicked off the project, or he left the project.
Wait, so which movie would be your favorite movie of all time, possibly?
It's between a couple things. Certainly Alien, Hot Fuzz, and In Bruges are among top 3.
In Bruges, really?
Yeah, I really like In Bruges. Have you seen it?
I've watched about half of it and then I got bored.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Definitely. You're going to have to convince me to rewatch that because I don't find it interesting at all.
I got it on Blu-ray, so when you come over, eventually we can watch it.
But Hot Fuzz is definitely my favorite Edgar Wright film, so
yeah, Hot Fuzz is great. But saw Ant-Man. I was surprised. I was expected something like 60s in the Rotten Tomatoes score, but was actually finished with an 80%. Critics seemed to like it. I even heard some talk that it still felt like Edgar Wright, even though he left the project early. Sadly, I did not feel Edgar Wright in it at all. It was a very by the numbers, very expected. You can see the plot coming a mile away. There's certain things I liked. Obviously, I love Paul Rudd. Michael Pena, who plays like his friend, is great and hilarious. They did a decent job at making Ant-Man, the character, like the superhero, kind of interesting and make his powers seem kind of cool. But the movie struggles to justify why I care about Ant-Man at all. The villain is, like all Marvel villains, completely one-dimensional. Comes out of nowhere. You can see how it fits into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's not great. So it's just a very standard kind of summer action movie. It does have a good sense of humor, but I just wish Edgar Wright had been the exclusive person and they had just given him his time and let him do what he wanted with it. But I'd say it's worth renting, like when it's on demand, but not anything that you need to jump and go see. The best movie of the summer is still Mad Max Fury Road, and I'd say Jurassic Park is easily number 2.
Well, I haven't seen Jurassic Park yet. It comes out on August 4th here, and I'm
hey, it's soon. You're kind of finally.
Yeah, yeah, but Mad Max Fury Road still probably
good.
One of my top movies of all time. When we do those lists, we'll definitely do a movie list in errata at some point because that's something I'm looking forward to. But yeah, I'm excited this weekend. I'm going to be going to another festival. This is a fire festival out on one of the islands here. So hopefully have some great photos of that to show and some good stories to tell. So definitely looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Definitely, man. I can't wait to see it on your blog. So yeah, let's take us out, Fliss.
Yeah, man. So hey, 12 episodes. I've had a lot of fun. I know Alex has had a lot of fun. I hope you're all having fun. Thanks for sticking with us. This marks roughly 3 months of the Impact Factor.
That's crazy.
Super exciting. Hard to believe. Still one of the highlights of my week. Hopefully one of the highlights of your week.
Yeah, definitely.
Please stay in touch. Communicate with us. We're dying to know what you think. You can find me on Twitter at the CFliss. That's at THECFLISS. Also, check out my blog, Fliss of the North Star, for my thoughts on pop culture, Japan, and more. Since I've been kind of not active in the last 2 weeks writing lots of posts, this week you get lots and lots of posts where I finally finish up my thoughts on the male body in anime, the recent festivals in Nanao, and some thoughts on Taylor Swift, her music, and feminism.
I'm looking forward to that. All I gotta say is Team Nikki. That's all I'm gonna say. So thank you everyone for.
Yeah, I have to tell you, man. I was in the middle of writing this post that was talking about how much I liked what Taylor Swift had done recently, and then that happened, and I was like, well, gotta completely change this post now.
Oh yeah. So thank you everyone for spending some time with us. If you're hearing this show, chances are you found it on our SoundCloud. That's soundcloud.com/theimpactfactor. Please look us up on the iTunes store and subscribe to the podcast there to get direct downloads of the episode each week, and we would love it if you rated us there and wrote us a review. It really will help people find us, and more people to hopefully join the Impact Factor community here. So for an archive of our old episodes, check us out on YouTube by searching the Impact Factor video games or checking the link in the description. We get our videos posted up there every week, as well as some Let's Plays. Maybe I'll get that going again soon when I jump into Rocket League soon. Maybe I'll stream some of that. So the Impact Factor is an extension of my blog about video games. That's the impactfactor.blogspot.com. Check there every Tuesday for a new review or article. As I mentioned this week, I wrote about Evo, eSports, and why fighting games matter. And I think it's one of my favorite pieces I've written too. I had a great time writing it. Fliss liked it. He is complimentary on Twitter at least, so that's all good. So please check that out. Put a lot of my heart and soul into that one, so I'd appreciate it if you give it a read. And then check there every Friday for my curation of the best written pieces from around the world of gaming. So send comments and suggestions for the podcast to impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Alex Samocha. That's Alex S.A. Mocha, like the coffee. And until next time, make an impact.